So I am now going to hand over to Corey Weddington. So Corey is a seasoned agency veteran with over a decade in WordPress. He wears many hats across design, development, digital marketing, and strategy. So for the past 5 years, he has been focused on leading WordPress and strategy solutions for the big guys. So he works for Microsoft, Google, and Starbucks. Yeah, pretty big. So today his talk will be From Pitch to Partnership, Growing Lasting Client Relationships. So please give it up for Corey.
Hey everybody. Can I do that or no? Yeah. Is it Okay, there we go. Maybe I'll freehand it. We'll see. As long as everybody can hear me. All right, hey everybody. Like the great introduction, my name's Corey Weddington. I'm actually from America, but I live in Taiwan. I've been living in Taiwan the last 4 years. I have kind of done it all from freelancing to working at digital agencies. I've worked kind of the full spectrum of digital agencies from 30-person agencies all the way up to 800-person agencies. So today I'm going to talk about some of the things that I wish I would have known, especially early on whenever I started freelancing. So hopefully this is applicable to a lot of you here today. Is there any freelancers in the audience today? Please. Okay, good. Small agency owners maybe? Okay, perfect, cool. So today when we look at the kind of client lifecycle, we're going to focus on 2 main points here. So if we break it up into 4 pieces, we have getting leads, we have pitching clients, we have successfully completing a project, and then we have ongoing work. So the 2 main focuses we're gonna talk about today are pitching clients and ongoing work. We're not gonna talk about getting leads. I think we could talk for hours, days, weeks about how to get leads. So we're not gonna touch on that, and we're not gonna touch on how to have a successful first project. So we're just gonna talk about those 2 main points. On the agenda today, we're gonna talk about the first call with the client. We're gonna talk about proposals, some of the do's and don'ts. We're going to talk about how to avoid the client chill. We're going to talk about backlogs, scheduled work, and workshops. So that's going to be the agenda for the day. So let's get right into it. So the first call, let's hope everything goes right. Somebody emails you about some work to do, a website, design work, whatever it is. We're going to talk about kind of what is mandatory on the first call. So first of all, there needs to be an actual call. I know that seems obvious, but for a lot of freelancers, this isn't such an obvious thing. It's very easy to get an email that says, hey, give me a quote on how much time to build a website, how much money to build a plugin or whatever else. Avoid clients who are reluctant to get on an actual phone call and discuss kind of what they're struggling with before you actually give out a quote. This is a really big one. It can be really easy to kind of just say, hey, it's $1,000, $2,000, but get on that call. It's really worth it. Let's say once you get on that call, a big thing is practice active listening. So it's really easy, especially for developers, to want to solve a problem right away, especially when you get on a call and you start hearing about whatever problems they're dealing with, slow website, bad SEO, security problems. Don't try to solve it just yet though. Focus on active listening, trying to understand their problem, take it all in, take a lot of notes. And then next, ask insightful questions. This is another big one. Before you start solving the problem, ask a lot of questions. Dig deep into that problem and don't make assumptions as they're talking through kind of their struggles. And then last of all, check client compatibility. This is a really big thing. And again, why it's so important to get on an actual phone call with the client. Clients who are demanding, hard to work with, they're late to meetings, they're bad at communication. Early on for that first meeting, you can kind of figure out all of those things and kind of understand if they're going to be a good client for you. And it's really easy to just say, hey, I don't know if I want to work with this person after talking to them on our first call. So next up, congratulations, you made it through the entire discovery. and hopefully you didn't ask for money. So you understand their problem, you asked a lot of questions, and now it's time to put together our proposal. Has anybody here put together like formal proposals, slide decks, PDFs, anything like that? A few people? Okay. So these are really important. Again, it can be really easy to kind of skip this phase and say, hey, I'm going to send an email. I'm just going to break out like, hey, the website will cost X amount of dollars, and here it is. But a really good proposal is a good way for a freelancer or a small agency to kind of punch above their weight and to really get bigger and bigger projects that they wouldn't normally get. I've seen small agencies that are 5 to 10 people get like 6-figure deals off good proposals versus agencies that have hundreds of people, just because they listened better, they put it all together better. So this is really a secret weapon for small agencies and freelancers, and something I'd really recommend kind of getting used to and start working on. So in our proposals, we're going to talk about a few pitfalls, some do's and don'ts. So first, we're going to talk about 3 big don'ts. So first of all, don't exaggerate. I know when and I've been there myself as a small freelancer, you want to kind of exaggerate. You want to say, hey, we've worked with these big clients. We have a team. There's like 3 or 4 of us. Just don't do it. It can work for a little while, but eventually when you make it to pitching bigger and bigger clients, they're going to kind of see right through that. It's really obvious to people with experience. So just being honest. If you're a single person freelancer, just acknowledge it. Turn that weakness into a strength, and just be honest about it. The next thing is don't generalize, specialize. This is a big thing. Again, for small agencies and freelancers, they tend to try to want to do everything. They want to do design, branding, web development, SEO, video, content writing. You can get some businesses like that without a doubt, but as you kind of move up the chain to work on bigger and bigger projects, it doesn't work so much. Big clients want people who specialize in very specific things, especially if you're a freelancer or a small agency owner. So I would say find out what you're good at and just focus on that, especially in the proposal. Find out what they want, specialize in it, show that you specialize in it. And then lastly, don't hold back. Voice your opinion. It's really easy to just say yes, yes, yes to clients and be very agreeable, especially in the proposal, saying, hey, you have a great idea. Yeah, let's move you in this way. Let's do the thing you said. Again, this works for smaller clients and certain clients, but a lot of clients really like when you're opinionated and you tell them, the idea you have is kind of dumb. I wouldn't recommend it. Instead, do X, Y, and Z. So be very opinionated in your proposals. Don't be so agreeable to everything they want to do, especially if you don't believe it. So next up is proposal essentials. So addressing the core. So in any proposal, you kind of have 2 sections, right? The first section is kind of all the specific things to the client you're pitching or giving the proposal for. And then the last section is kind of templated, generic stuff that you'll probably have for the majority of your proposals. So the first part that is kind of tailor-made for that client is first off echoing the client's struggle. So every good proposal starts off with readdressing what the problem is. So going back to that first client call, they said, hey, we're dealing with all of these problems. Hopefully you took down notes, and the first page of any good proposal should echo back all of those struggles in like a paragraph or 2, just to readdress that you have this shared understanding of what we're talking about. The next few pages should be proposing your solution. So this is the problem, here's how I plan to fix it. Be very clear, be very concise. This doesn't need to be like a 10-page document. You can usually get through pretty complex solutions in 2 pages, just at a high level, explaining how you plan to address it. And then the last part of it is highlight your expertise. So if you have a client that's in a similar industry, you tackled a similar project, the next part of the proposal is you want to show that off. If you did a migration from Squarespace to WordPress and this is what the client wants, show that in the next slide that you've done this for other clients before and it was successful, and show off your work. The next one is proving your worth. So whenever I talked about that kind of templated approach, the last part of the proposal typically is kind of templated. So this is showing other work that you've done, maybe not industry or client specific, just more general. So you can have a few slides or a few pages of kind of case studies or work you've done to just show that, hey, I'm experienced, I've done cool stuff. And then the last part of it is talking numbers. So after you've showed off, your how you work. Well, okay, sorry, I missed this. How you work is you want to show off like your lines of communication, project management tools, stuff like that. So if you're a freelancer that only works in WhatsApp, show that, hey, I communicate in WhatsApp, or I communicate in Slack, I use Jira, I use Asana. Show your kind of workflow and how you work through your clients. Show your past work, and then at the very end of it, you want to talk numbers. So you want to be really transparent in this and really lay it out. This is also going to help your projects in general. If you can really lay out, hey, this is X amount of hours, this is what we're covering, and it creates this shared understanding of, hey, there's this deck that we gave you, you agreed to it, at a certain point and you signed off on it, instead of just a series of a bunch of emails and back and forths where you agreed to X amount of hours. So that is how you create a winning proposal. So once that proposal is all done, it's really easy to just want to send it off in an email. I would definitely avoid against that. You want to get on a call, again, with the client. I know it takes time. I know people don't love it. I know I didn't used to love it. But showing this proposal in a Zoom call or an actual in-person meeting is going to really help. You can address, issues that they have when you go through it. You can answer questions, all of this. Effectively presenting a proposal should take 30 to 45 minutes. This doesn't need to be like a 2-hour-long thing. You can get through a 10, 15-page proposal in 30 minutes. You don't need to be hyper-specific on all the details, and then you should have 15, 20 minutes to answer questions. So make sure you don't bore the clients when you're going through this process in PowerPoint or Google Slides. Cool. So let's fast forward. Let's pretend our pitch went good. We built an amazing proposal. We won the project. We built the project, and it went amazing. The client was happy. We built them a new website. We did new brand package, SEO, whatever, and we're finished. So now the client disappears. We don't hear from the client for 3 to 6 months, a year, or whatever. Has this happened to anybody here? Where you build a site? Yeah, so many, right? It sucks, yeah. So let's talk about how do we avoid this. So I call this the chill, right? And this is a problem that a lot of people deal with. So we're gonna talk about 3 kind of secret weapons, not so secretive, but maybe it just is gonna take a reminder to bring this up to avoid the client chill. And I've had a lot of luck with these 3 things at numerous agencies I've worked at, and now this is the majority of my job. So let's talk about this. So the first is backlogs. So staying engaged with the vault of value. So the first crucial thing to maintaining engagement is an active backlog. Hopefully everybody here knows what a backlog is, but this is a buildup of work that needs to be completed. So backlogs are a great thing to kind of catch all the not now, maybe later items. So when you're going through a project, always kind of keep backlogs in mind. It's really common that you're going through a project and a client says, hey, I want this cool slider that I saw on my friend's website. Can you build that? Well, no, that wasn't in our statement of work that we outlined and we estimated on, but we'll take that slider and we'll put it in a backlog and we'll follow up after the project. So with that mentality, it's easy to start taking all these things that the client is asking for that's out of scope and building out a backlog. And hopefully when you get out of this project phase, you have a well-stocked backlog with 10, 20 items that the client was wanting, or even maybe you pitched and said, hey, it would be a good idea to do X, Y, and Z. So a good backlog should at least keep you busy for, at minimum, a month. That's kind of like a healthy backlog. Bonus points if you create a backlog somewhere that the client can see this. So if you have like a shared Jira or Asana board or Trello or something, having one of those for each of your clients and having a backlog so that they can actually go in and see this at any time creates that partnership so they understand that, hey, there's more work to be had here, and whenever it comes time to keep moving on these things, you have visibility, you can add items yourself. The next one, this one is, to be honest, more of a common thing, I'd say, especially in the last 4 years, which is scheduled work. I know a lot of freelancers and agencies build a lot of their revenue pipelines on this alone. So scheduled work, it's boring, but it can really serve as kind of a dependable bridge between you and the client to keep that line of communication open. Scheduled work would typically, and the most common form with this group is probably scheduled updates, plugin updates, WordPress core updates. Sometimes they can even go to things like quarterly SEO audits, yearly accessibility audits, CRO audits, etc. I've seen people create drip feeds so that any client they've ever worked with goes on a list and they get scheduled emails every 3, 6, 12 months of, hey, let's work on this, let's work on that. You have WordPress updates, you have security updates. These are really just a good way, especially when a client is kind of going into this like silent mode, to re-engage. Maybe you have a backlog and you need a reason to kind of bring up that, hey, we need to work on some of these things, and also there's some plugin updates. It's a really easy way to just open that communication up again. Okay, and the last one is workshops or roadmap planning. You could call it either. So these are a really, really valuable thing. I don't see freelancers or agencies do this nearly as much. So when typical audits and task lists don't get much attention from busy clients, a partner road mapping workshop can be a great way to keep things moving again. And this can really excite and re-energize a client. What this would typically be is you'd pull out all your backlog items that you talked about, months back. You pull up a Miro board or some kind of interactive whiteboarding session. You put a bunch of things from like maybe cool things that competitors have been doing or new industry trends. And then you get on a meeting with them and you go through and you kind of plan out like, hey, what are your pain points? You've been living with this website or this product for the last 6 or 12 months. What's working good? What's working bad? What are your competitors doing? What can we change or improve? And it's this kind of interactive session that gets a client really excited. So this is a really good way to kind of re-engage that partnership and to get them excited and interested in doing things. These sessions can be free, and it's absolutely worth an hour of your time in a given 6 months to try to re-engage that client. Cool, so that's it. So today we talked about ways to build better relationships with both new and existing clients. If you use what we covered today, you'll be on track to hit 2 important goals. So first, you're gonna increase your win rate, which increases revenue. And the second, you're gonna extend client relationships, which is extending your revenue out. So these are typically the 2 easiest kind of low-hanging fruit items I've seen for freelancers or small business or small agency owners to increase their revenue and extend their revenue pipeline. So yeah, that's it. Any questions?
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
So the question was what kind of projects I do?
In particular, because you have worked with like the biggest names like Google and Microsoft, so what kind of so client management is so important, and you've done it for like the most important clients. So what kind of projects have you done for them?
Yeah, I'll say this kind of out of the gate. One of the key differences between small clients and like the big enterprise Fortune 50 clients, the bigger the client is, surprisingly, the easier it becomes. I don't know why it works like that, but the smaller clients are the hardest to deal with clients. I would say, typically speaking, on the enterprise level, I do a lot of re-platforms and digital transformation projects. So, Microsoft wants to move from like Sitecore over to WordPress, and they need to move 10 of their blogs over. It's those kind of projects typically. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right that like the larger companies have their processes set up. So as a freelancer, that would be easier to work with. So then I have another question. Can you tell us about a horror project you've worked on, maybe for a smaller company, like because you've just done this beautiful presentation, and have you any experiences that you've learned from?
Yeah, I think all the horror projects are kind of early in your career. I think everybody just has to go through those projects. I remember my first few projects as a freelancer, like back in 2012, 2013, just not knowing, how to go about this. Someone asked for a website and they asked how much, and I just threw out a number. I was $2,000, and they said, yeah, sure. And it just, there was no scope. There was no, we're going to build X amount of pages or X amount of hours, and it just dragged on and on. And I remember at the end of this project, I did the math on it, and I made less than minimum wage. I made like half of what minimum wage was. And I was like, I got to figure this out. I got to get better at it. So after that, I just really dug into how can I do these better? How can I outline an actual scope? How can I set up contracts in a way where I'm not making less than someone at McDonald's? So yeah.
Questions?
Hi, I'm Lorna. Along the same lines of big clients versus small clients, specifically in my case, when I work with Upwork, we want to pitch through proposals to clients, for example, for web maintenance and so on and so forth. Do you have any tips that we can take from what we hear today towards creating proposals for Upwork? Because that's very direct. We can't really ask customers too much question without, really. I don't know. I don't know how to express.
So are you asking through Upwork?
That's right.
Okay. To be really candid, I have not had a lot of experience from Upwork, right? But what I can say is that try to distinguish yourself as much as possible, right? So if you look at the landscape of Upwork, going back to my point about be very opinionated and be willing to tell people that what they're trying to do is actually not a good approach, and here's what you would suggest. Sometimes in a landscape where someone has 20, 30 proposals going on, just being that voice that says, hey, this isn't a good idea is enough to get them on a call with you. So I would say try as hard as you can to stand out and look at, consider all the proposals that are coming there and how can you be different from those.
Hi, good morning. My name is CV Chons, and I have a question. Have you ever want to fire a client even though they are very profitable?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think being willing to fire a client is really important. Sometimes you look at a client and, one, I think it's important to really figure out the value of that client. Are they really profitable? Sometimes it can be misleading. You get a large amount of money, but the amount of hours that they spend, it kind of equates to when you do the math, oh wait, we're making way less than we want to per hour. So one, figuring that out is really important. Two, if they're just putting a strain on you and they're burning out you or your team or other things, it's important to try to address that. I think there's a few ways to get ahead of it. One, on the client relationship side, you can have a real candid conversation and set boundaries of this is how we work. Here, you have X amount of hours, you need to communicate through these channels, you need to follow these guidelines, and if they're not willing to do that, you need to make them pay for every little misstep they do, right? In terms of after hours meeting, that costs money. Going over on hours, okay, now our hourly rate is double, and really force them in line financially to kind of follow what you're setting up in terms of guidelines.
Thank you.
One more. Okay, one more.
Hello, hi, Andrew Garcia from Manila. Big fan of your work. Related to problematic clients, can you go deeper on how to gauge compatibility? Or more importantly, what questions to ask, what red flags to look for to avoid turning a bad prospect to a bad client?
Yeah, sure. That's a good one. So questions to ask clients to figure out if they're a nightmare client. The easiest one I've found is to get them to talk about their last agency. If they say, hey, hated your last agency. They were the worst people ever. They were slow. They didn't pick up my call at 1 a.m. What's wrong with them? That's how you figure that out right out of the gate. If they talk really highly about their last agency and they say, hey, it just wasn't a fit, they moved on or something like this, they're generally good. But it's kind of, like relationships. Ask about an ex and just kind of gauge how bad they talk about them and how long. I would say if it exceeds 3 or 4 minutes, then they're probably the nightmare client, yeah. So I think that's it for questions. Yeah, thanks everybody.
Can I ask one? One more?
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time. So recently I experienced one issue with one of my clients. So there was a requirement. I was doing that and it was almost completed. And client requested me to do a small change. It was just like reducing 5 pixels to 3 pixels, okay? And the scope of was completed. But in the meantime, website was having some issue in the back that I and the client didn't realize. And that was not the scope of my work. But as the site was not working properly, client was dealing with lots of business. And he said that like I am business blah blah blah, and I said that okay, I think it's my ethics as a developer to solve that without carrying the money. And I helped to I tried a lot to fix that issue, but it was a plugin issue, like conflicting between the plugins, and I had to restore the website back where I started, because I didn't actually check it. So in the meantime, what client is saying that is I am not going to pay you because all the work that you did is restored, but as a developer, I work so many hours on that particular project. So in that case, how I can deal with that client?
Yeah, so this is a common problem. You kind of agree to fixing a really tiny, small thing, and then it spirals out into a bigger and bigger thing. And before you know it, you've worked 12, 13, 20 hours on something you thought were 30 minutes. With that, I think it's two main things. Set boundaries. So one, everything should equate to how much time you're spending. So setting this boundary with your client and saying, hey, my hourly rate is X. For this task, it's going to be 30 minutes or 1 hour. Even if it's free, you say, hey, I think that'll take 1 hour to fix. I can do it for free. If it exceeds that 1 hour, then we move to a billable model. Doing that with everything, no matter how small or big the work is, sets this expectation where you don't get in that situation. Even whenever scope creep comes in, you estimated 10 hours, and now they're adding little things here and there. Okay, well, we need 10 more hours. And when you work with that and set that boundary, it helps out a lot, I think.